When you're solving linear equations with negative variables, you apply the same approach that will apply when you're solving linear equations with positive variables. So because you want to be left with x in the first equation, we shall start by subtracting 21 on both sides. So you'll be left with negative 2x will be equal to negative 8. And then the opposite of multiplying by negative 2 is dividing by negative 2. So x will be equal to 4. You can apply the same approach in the second problem. Start by subtracting 13 on both sides. And you'll be left with the negative x over 3 will be equal to negative 1. And then the opposite of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. So multiply by 3 both sides. 3 and 3 cancel. So you'll end up with negative x will be equal to negative 3. Now, because you want to be left with x alone, remember this is like similar to negative 1x, divide by negative 1 on both sides. So x will be equal to positive 3. All right, so let's apply the same approach in C and D. Again, in C, subtract 7 on both sides. 7 minus 7 is 0, so we'll be left with negative 3x over 7 will be equal to minus 3 minus 7, that will be minus 10. The opposite of dividing by 7 is multiplying by 7. And these two will cancel, yeah, because a seventh over 7 is 1. So negative 3x will be equal to negative 70. And then because we want to be left with x alone, the opposite of multiplying by negative 3 is dividing by negative 3. So x will be equal to 70 over 3. The next problem, start by eliminating a smaller x. So eliminate smaller x. So we start by eliminating smaller x. Basically, let's add 3x on both sides. The smaller x is negative 3x in this case. So we can start by adding 3x on each side. So what we'll end up with here is negative x plus 3x, that will be 2x minus 2 will be equal to 8. So you end up with a simple linear equation that can just be solved by inverse processes. So add 2 on both sides. So you'll end up with 2x is equal to 10. And then you divide by 2, x is equals to 5. Okay, next question. So here we have a half multiplied by 1 minus 3x is equals to negative 1. Now, the first thing is to get rid of this a half. And to do that, I mean, the opposite of dividing by 2 is multiplying by 2. So multiply by 2 on both sides. A half of 2 is 1, so that cancels. So you'll end up with 1 minus 3x is equal to negative 2. And then we want to be left with x alone. So let's get rid of this 1. Subtract 1, subtract 1. So you'll end up with negative 3x will be equal to negative 3. And then the opposite of multiplying by negative 3 is dividing by negative 3. So x will be equal to 1. Okay, last question. Of course, before we start doing anything, we have to get rid of these brackets. So let's multiply out the brackets. So 6 minus 12x will be equal to negative 4 minus 7x. All right, and then eliminate the smaller x. So eliminate the smaller x. Now, smaller x happens to be a negative 12x, so add 12x on both sides. Okay. So what you'll end up with is 6 will be equal to negative 4 plus 5x. And then subtract, because you want to be left with x alone, add 4 on both sides, because the opposite of subtracting 4 is adding 4. You'll end up with 10 will be equal to 5x, and then you divide by 5. So x will be equal to 2.